Disclaimer. No data subjects were harmed in the making of this podcast.
Welcome to the Privacy Bar and Bants podcast. We make privacy awareness simple. Sit back, relax, and grab your darkest privacy myths and misconceptions. Your mind-boggling experience begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I love to drink water.
Anyway,
Right,
so who
because
am
you
I?
are.
I'm Yetunde
Okay,
Industry.
Next question. Next.
Dolly baby, DPO.
What does
You know,
DPO
I
mean?
realized that we can actually get away with calling you DPO. Dolapo DPO, Data Protection Officer, DPO, Dolly the DPO.
No, never in a million years. How?
I'm sure people like call you DPO, but like my own is just because like you are an expert. Nobody calls you DPO. Well, they are sleeping on the nickname.
I give up. I'm done with you. But anyways,
They are
how are you?
sleeping
How was
on
your
a
week?
nickname. Well, we move on. I'm
Okay,
fine. I'm
that's not my
good.
nickname.
I'm fine. I'm good. I mean, I'm excited to be here. And excited is a huge word. I'm excited to be here. I'm never so excited to be
I'm
here. So
excited.
yes, yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Yeah, that's it.
You always bring up new things. What does excited mean?
I'm nervous and excited to be here. So I spent my whole week thinking about this
Wow.
moment where we'll have to come and do this recording, and I have been nervous and excited. So
I can imagine.
nervous because I don't know what to expect really. Excited because I'm hopeful and optimistic. So I'm excited. Yeah.
You don't know what to expect in terms of like the recording or like people listening in eventually.
The whole shebang, to be honest, I feel like if you've not done podcasts before, you don't know what to expect. I literally have zero expectations. I just have hopes that things will go well, that people will enjoy the podcast, that will like people would actually really really enjoy listening to it. Will build an audience. That our recording sessions will be fun and not boring for us. That the work that we put in behind the scenes for the podcast would like show through in the podcast that we create. So yeah, I'm hopeful and nervous and excited and not expectant because I don't know what to be expectant of. How about you? How are you feeling?
Well, thank you, Yetunde Longman, for the new term because I'm feeling excited. Well, I've been honestly really
You're
excited
welcome.
about doing this, but at the same time, I've been really tense. Like, what's gonna happen? How am I going to do this? Like you said, it's not something that I've ever done before. And if you ask in January, would you be interested in starting a podcast or joining a podcast? My definite answer would have been no, not interested. But here we are. I mean, we're doing it, and I'm hopeful and I'm excited about possible outcomes, but still tensed.
Yeah, that podcast one. I definitely did not have podcast on my yearly goals this year. Not like yearly goals, I write them down, I tick
Oh,
off everything on the list. But like it just came out of nowhere. But I like things like this because it's
goal smasher,
dynamic.
goal
Yes,
conqueror.
it's just different, just dynamic. This is different.
Yeah.
We're sure here. Exactly. So there's that like excitement, of like this being a whole new thing. Like I'm actually really excited. But then one thing that's been bugging me down, like one detail. I've just been thinking, who wants to listen to people talk about privacy? Who wants to listen to us talk about privacy? Because I feel like, okay, so I listen to privacy podcasts, right? But I feel like
True.
some of them, like they're either really serious, like an interview with, like they're always very like, put together,
Straight to the point.
serious, straight to the point. They're discussing critical points, changing, life changing, dynamic changing, novel ideas, nuances, and I'm like, do I know enough to like what like because for us I think our personality is quite like
I
fun
can
and lighthearted.
totally
I mean
relate.
because I'm thinking the podcast is called Privacy Band Bands, and that's fair enough. I mean, we're bantering our personality, right? So it's not that dynamic of us being very
No,
serious. I don't know. I don't know what the vibe is.
I can actually totally relate. So when we're going to start this, I'm like, okay, let me see what other people have done, and I started like one privacy. I am listening to like maybe a quarter of an episode on a privacy podcast, and I'm like, nah, man. Like it made me feel like, how am I gonna do this? No, this is not what I'm signing up for. Nope, nope. So I just went and I'm like, nah, not doing that, not doing this. This has to reflect like, more of Yetunde's character and less of my serious character.
I'm sorry, are you trying to insinuate that I'm the less serious person on this podcast and you are the most serious one? Well, yeah, that
No,
you are
so
right
to
because
be
you
fair,
are the
you're more
industry
fun.
expert.
I do
Really,
understand.
I don't think anyone has ever said that before, but thank you. Take it as a compliment.
But, yeah, I think you're definitely a more fun person than I am. So,
We'll find
but
out on this
anyways,
podcast. To
we
be seen.
I know,
To be
right?
seen, to be seen, to be seen. Because so then I then keep thinking like, so who's going to like so because I'm thinking who's going to listen, like because it's going to be fun, like but I think that everybody has information is better when it's made fun, right? So I believe that everybody, whether serious, unserious, curious, enthusiastic, whatever you may be, I feel like you can do it a little bit more fun. If you enjoy privacy stuff as well already, so this is just going to make it even better because we are hoping that when you're listening to us, make it lighthearted and still have a good and fun episode. You can listen to it at any point. It's just easy. That's how I feel.
Sure, sure. We're hopeful.
We're hopeful. We're hopeful. We're excited, and we don't know what to expect yet. We'll see. We'll see. But one thing I keep dreading, I can't lie, is this whole like us having to edit thing. Like I don't think I'm keen on listening to the
That
sound
part
of
where
my
we have to
voice.
sit down and really listen to what we've said, right?
Yo, I
Uh,
think that I might end up feeling like I've said a lot of rubbish. Ah!
I think for me it's just the fact that I don't like the sound of my own voice. I can't listen to like myself talk. I can't listen to recordings of myself. Like I just don't like the sound of my voice, and especially the fact that I can't even sing. So sometimes when I'm listening to myself talk, it's like, "Are you trying to sing?" So I'm like, no, 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 no."
She said, "Am I trying to sing?" LOL.
Nah.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, to be honest, I guess now everybody's gonna be listening to you singing.
True.
Exactly. So, you people get ready for terrible voices because Dolapo and I don't know how to sing. That's what I can say. But I feel like you still like our voices smooth, velvety, just what you need for a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon or a Friday evening, you know, to unwind. We really want to, help you
I know, right?
relax.
So,
So,
sorry.
DPO Dolly Dolly. Yeah, tell us about you. Who are you? Who are people listening to? Give them a feel of the character behind the voice, the woman behind the
So,
mic.
rather than talk about who I am, I rather start with who I'm not. I am not a privacy expert.
Basbos.
I am not a
Basbos.
you.
She's giving you guys negative definition.
I am not. My name is not Dolly. My name is Dolapo. It's not Dolly Dolly too. My name is Dolapo. I'm a tech policy analyst at Tech Hive Advisory. Um, yeah, I'm a privacy newbie. I prefer to refer to myself as that. But anyways, I think I am a privacy lover. I'm a data protection lover, and I love my job. Right?
This is the issue. People forming modesty when they really shouldn't be. Is not nice. I'm sorry. Let me
No,
help her
just tell us about yourself.
reintroduce herself. Her name is Dolly. Dolly is a DPO, a data protection organ. Yeah, she's Dolapo
Never
DPO
heard
for
that
short,
before.
data protection organ for shorts. Um, um, yes, that's who Dolly is. She's an ex. Here we are.
Yetunde, can we
So
just move
me,
on? Thank you. Thank you for that.
you're welcome. You're welcome. I aspire to be inspired to require to
To Maguire.
to have. Anyway, so who am I? I'm Yetunde. Well, I'm also a data protection analyst, enthusiast, everything. So I'm not working at Tech Hive me. You know, although I fancy them to be friends of myself, but I am not, and I'm not working in data protection anywhere at the moment. I'm currently exploring a bit of writing. So yeah, that's where you guys have the privilege to listen to my voice. Um, please don't take it for granted. Thank you.
I hear you.
That's who I am.
So we're going to be talking about privacy fields, right? Privacy fields are just, how do I put it now? Things that happen in the privacy world that would shock you. Like you will be shocked to your knees, right? So we're terming them as privacy fields, and we're going to be discussing some of the ones that really, really shocked us, right? So yeah, that's basically it. So
I think that's an apt description. Shock. Because I think so the thing is some of them are funny. So they're shocking because some of them are funny. Some of them are
some will disappoint
ridiculous.
you also.
Yes. Many will disappoint you. How about that? I think that's it. Probably more. Let's manage expectations very well on this episode, this podcast.
Many, okay.
Many will disappoint you. Some will just excite you. Some will be things that you've heard
Excite.
about before, but yeah, excite. I mean, like it's exciting. Maybe you've heard about it before being mentioned, and this is your opportunity to learn more
Okay,
about
maybe the way we're going to explain it.
exactly. So maybe we'll give a little more detail than maybe you have had in the past or whatnot. Okay. So, um, Delakwa, I don't know if you want to go first. Which one shocked you the most? Since you used shock as our anchor word for this episode, let us go with
So
shock.
this is my all-time favorite, right? Why is my favorite? Because these guys in the guys in this story actually thought they were doing the right thing, right? So those times when you're very confident that you're doing the right thing, but in actual fact, you're doing nonsense, right? So
You
this is the
know,
story of yeah. So this is the story of a high school, right? So this school thought that a proper interpretation of the GDPR would be to not use people's surnames on textbooks, notebooks, and probably if you extend it, maybe yearbooks and everything. So they started using numbers to identify people. So, for example, in the class where there are two Dolapos, right, there'll be a Dolapo 1 and a Dolapo 2. So, in this case, there was a Harry 1 and a Harry 2, right? So, they stopped using the surnames of kids or students on their textbooks, their notebooks, basically just their first name. But what really hits me for me is how would they have thought that this was interpreting the GDPR? The GDPR actually it's actually for you to help protect your identity and use it in the right way, right? Use your personal data in the right way. But in this case, right, I think they created room for loss of identity. So they literally did the opposite of what the GDPR wanted them to do, right? Or they literally just over interpreted it
they
or
turned the
stretched it out
interpretation
of
on its
context.
head. They turned the interpretation on
You
its head.
get. And I
So
think
I
the
mean,
funny
yeah,
part of this story was during Christmas, one of the kids sent a note to the other kid. So I think he read from Jack 2 to Harry 2 or from Harry 2 to Jack 2. And as a Nigerian mother, I give my son a name or my child a name. If my child brings, for example, Iretomi Day 1 back to me, well, me and the teachers are going to have a sit down and talk, right? So I think it was just a funny story to me.
fair enough. One thing that we should say though, first, actually, GDPR for those who maybe are not within the privacy space. Like I said, the podcast is for the seriously unserious. So if you're just curious, or you're also welcome to listen. So GDPR means General Data Protection Regulation. It
Yeah,
was the law
exactly.
passed in 2018 by the EU to regulate the processing of personal data. Personal data being any data that can make somebody identifiable. So that would include, as Olapo has rightly pointed out, name. And I think for me, so what happened, I guess, that was Dolakwa has basically told us the misinterpretation. So what was misinterpreted actually is the fact that several parts of the GDPR that says, um, so in processing anybody's personal data, processing data including anything you do with personal data, anything you do with anything known as personal data, whether you store it, you write it, you put it down, you name it, whatever, that is a form of processing. So in this situation, when schools write children's names on their books, or that's a form of processing. And the thing is, in processing data, GDPR requires that you uphold yourself to certain principles, including one of which is the security principle, which entails that you ensure that the confidentiality, integrity, availability of the data is protected. You don't process more data than you need to. So those are principles that kind of frame this decision, because when you think about it, they said there's an obligation to maintain confidentiality. So to them, if there's so many Harrys in the world, if a kid's notebook is somewhere on a table with people who shouldn't ordinarily have access to that data, seeing Harry 1 or Harry 2 would not help them identify the data. That's something that in data protection space is known as pseudonymization, which is a method of making sure personal data is no longer personal data, but is now like non-personal data. So it's because it cannot identify someone. So Harry 1, Harry 2, Iremide 1, Yetunde 1, Dolapo 1, DPO 1 doesn't identify anybody specifically.
Please refrain from
So
putting one at
that
the back
that
of
was
my
their
name.
method of going about it. But as Dolapo said, it literally turned the whole thing on its head, right? And these are the issues.
Used for addressing.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Harry one doesn't identify someone, but he also, like, I think even in terms of looking at the content of the GDPR itself, this is also like it doesn't. So Harry, okay, so you have Harry one, Harry two, Harry three. It offends against the spirit of the regulation, because the regulation wasn't saying, oh, we don't want personal data. It just says when you're processing personal data, make sure you comply with these principles. It's not like don't make everybody identify people, but by not identifying them so that you can get your way with the regulation, right? That's not what the spirit of the law is about.
But anyways, yeah, totally. I think for me, it's just a really funny story because again, I think this was like the one privacy field where the guys actually thought they were doing the right thing, but were not actually. So for me, it's really funny. So I said, yeah, I totally agree. Like for me, this was one story where, like, out of all the privacy fails I came across, right, or I've come across, this was one that the people in the story actually thought they were doing the right thing, right? The people in context actually thought they were doing the right thing, but in actual fact, they didn't get it right. Big zero, big
Yeah.
fail.
Oversabi.
Over
Oversabi means like doing too much, but doing nothing at the same time. That's literally
the
what that
literal
was.
case
It
of
was
Obasabi actually.
exactly there
So
was
you tell me
nothing.
which privacy fail has stood out for you?
I mean, for me, probably my funniest one that I have and I can think of is probably the guy who tried to be forgotten but could never be forgotten. So actually, to be fair, I can't say it was. Is it? I'd say it's not a privacy fail for anyone really more than him. So the general data protection regulation, which wasn't in operation at this time, which has since come, has created the right to be forgotten, which everyone now knows. But before that, when the EU was still operating under the data protection directive, um the position of the law was there was no provision on the right to be forgotten, which is the right to, if you have any information out there, to actually record that information back, and for it to no longer be published. So this case actually was between Google and this individual who sued Google. So what had happened was he had been bankrupt in the past, and so a couple of blogs had posted it, and he was trying to get into new businesses, but every time people googled him, they would see his history of bankruptcy, and so he felt expression and all that. So he sued Google because Google lists. So when you search someone or search something on Google, Google actually crawls websites that have relevant information and then lists them in order of how relevant the information the website provides is to your search. So if you search the man's name, Google would come up with a list of, amongst other things, list of articles that refer to him and his bankruptcy, right? So that's how Google works. So he this was really creating it was really affecting his reputation, and he didn't want that information out there anymore. So he sued Google, asked Google to delist those links to those articles, so to take them off the list. And Google was like, sorry, no, we can't. And so the case then gets referred. He sues them, it goes to court, and when it gets to the courts, I think it was in Spain, the cases get referred to the Court of Justice of the European Union, who that's the court that basically deals with any questions that local courts or national courts cannot answer with regards to regulations that are EU wide. So in this case, the GDPR is EU wide, or as it was at the time, the Data Protection Directive was EU wide. So they referred the question to the CJU, and then when upon getting to the Court of Justice of the European Union, the court was like, yeah, this man does have a right to request for his information to be delisted. And Google has an obligation to delist the information, and also to inform any other third parties that they have shared that information with, to take it down. So that was where the obligation, or the right, the data subject's right to be forgotten, came up from. It was because of that case. But the interesting thing is, because, like I said, Google works to crawl, or it crawls websites to pull together, give you a list of relevant information in the order of relevancy of the information that you search for. Google, um, if you now even Google the man, what happens is, because the man's name is still, if you Google his name, because his name is still relevant to the right to be forgotten, which was because of his bankruptcy, what has happened is that there are now lots of cases, or lots of articles that have been listed by Google about him, which still refer to his bankruptcy, because they talk about the right to be forgotten. So apparently, from what was like two articles that could have that refer to his bankruptcy, there are now over 800 articles that refer to his bankruptcy. I mean, look at us, we're even talking about it here, where we're still talking about this bankruptcy, although we don't mention his name, but we're talking about his bankruptcy. And if we had mentioned his name, if you Googled his name, and if we maybe had a script for the episode, maybe posted on our website, it would still include that and our discussion of his bankruptcy in the discussion of the right to be forgotten on Google's list, right, of websites that contain relevant information. So this was actually totally hilarious. I feel bad for him though, I can't lie, because he really wanted to be forgotten,
If you
but
think about it, he probably wouldn't have thought in a million years that it would turn out like this. Probably thought, oh, the articles will be taken down, and I'll, I'll get what I want.
exactly.
But I mean, years down the line, and it's still all over
Here
the
we
place.
are.
So I feel bad for him. Like,
The
yeah.
man who wanted to be forgotten, who will never be forgotten. The man who created
But
the right
then,
to
to
be
be fair,
forgotten.
he also championed the privacy, a data subject right. So, oh well.
Yeah, and I think that that's maybe the only case where, like, that led to the creation of a data subjects rights, because otherwise they were all, I mean, suggested in the creation of the GDPR, or maybe some other international treaties or laws. That's how they came about. This is the first litigation motivated, I think, first and only litigation motivated data subject rights. So I mean, he has a lot to be proud of, but the
I,
bankruptcy that he wanted to be
I
forgotten
think
for.
that's the silver lining to the story.
I mean, silver lining. We have to always find silver linings, don't we? I mean, Dolapo,
You
there was
dear.
one you mentioned to me earlier actually that I thought was also funny. I mean,
Which of
do you
them?
remember the one I was talking? The one about the people who dumped records in a random place. Blah 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 blah. I'll
Oh,
leave you to tell us the
that
story.
one. So for me, there's this huge assumption that when you talk, or not assumption, a lot of times when you talk about privacy and data protection, everybody talks online, but people forget
Yeah.
that privacy is as much physical as it's online, right? So for this story, I think it was a pharmacy or hospital or so, and they thought that a proper way to dispense of people's data that was on hard paper, a lot of people's data that has been recorded on paper, probably when you go to the hospital and fill form. So for example, Nigerian hospitals, have you noticed, especially the like public ones or the um, federal owned ones, right, or state owned hospitals, they ask you for ridiculous amount of data that they probably won't need. Why do you need my mother's maiden name to treat me?
Uh,
Why?
my personal
Why?
favorite, state
Why?
of
Like you
origin
keep
and
asking.
religion. I think my personal favorite, state of origin and religion. Those are my personal
Do you
favorites.
get? I can imagine, and then for in this case, it was even more like sensitive data because it was health data, right? People, it's really private. A lot of people, and this dispensary, right, thought the best thing would be to dump their records outside with in cardboard boxes. They didn't even maybe shred it or anything. They just dumped like thousands of files in their backyard or in their junkyard, and I'm like, wow, smart move. And I'm like, wow, okay, you guys did it for me. Like it's always so simple, but it just goes to say how much people, a lot of people don't even respect people's rights, don't pay enough attention to because it's a health facility. People's sensitive data. Oh no, this story killed me.
No, I think so. The thing is, I think people don't actually understand the. So I think, and we're going to have an episode on that at some point as well, right, Dolakbo? Where we're going to be discussing like the consequences of the data that we have. I feel like our data is so important that like people don't understand the weight of every piece of personal data that you put out there or you give to someone, or the consequences it can have on you.
Exactly.
So it's always like when
I
people
think
do things
funny
like this,
funny
it's
story.
always
I was speaking to someone and she said, "Oh, I really don't care if my phone is hacked." And I'm like, "Wait, are my pictures on your phone?" She said, "Yes." Our WhatsApp conversations on your phone? She said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, I'm going to cut you off from my list of people that I speak with or share my data with."
I mean, this was the situation as well. Even when people, those loan companies, those payday loan companies, and we certainly are also planning to have an episode around that as well, where people, so when you're
Most
signing up to the
definitely.
payday loan companies, they ask you for access to grant access to the apps to your contact list. And what you do is you actually are giving them the personal data of everybody on your contact list because you're giving them access to everybody's phone number, which they would then use to, in my opinion, I think it's a form of harassment. If I'm getting a message from someone I don't want a message from, or I'm not expecting a message from, it's a form of harassment to harass
Definitely.
people when you have failed to pay your loan. It's very, and this thing is crazy because someone can have your number that you don't even have their number, and so you get a message from a random number saying, "Oh, you need to pay." XYZ person is fraudulent. They owe us
Half
money.
of the time when I get
If
these
the
messages, I don't
police
even
is
know who
looking for
those people
them.
are.
Exactly. Because
But I
so many
think
people have
I think
access to your
I think
phone
like you
number.
said, people need to just be more responsible about knowing that I'm holding, like I hold a lot of people's personal data, whether sensitive or non-sensitive, and I have a responsibility towards that data, you know.
Yeah.
And
I think
some they
another
have even like a higher responsibility.
Exactly, exactly. And I think another element is people forget that. So when we said that processing under the GDPR, under data protection regulation, means anything you do with data, that includes disposing of the data. So even when you are disposing the data,
Definitely.
you must do it in a way that assures the security of the data, which includes protecting the confidentiality of the data. So I guess in a way, this story sort of is like a contrast to the Harry story. So this one is over Sabi and under Sabi. Over Sabi means like doing
This
too
one
much, which
is
you referred to earlier, and then for the justice dispensary, that's under Sabi because they have literally done less than they expected to do, right? So it's one of those
exactly.
issues. Yeah. So yeah, that was actually quite when you were telling me about it, I was like, yeah, I can't believe. So, and this is why, the funny thing is when businesses actually have confidential information that is maybe their trade secrets. So a trade secret is a secret that is a piece of information that is important to your business operations. So maybe like the recipe for Coca-Cola or the recipe for KFC chicken. Those are trade secrets, right? When businesses have trade secrets, they are always using shredders to dispose of the documents of the documents that contain those trade secrets. So they'll remember to use a shredder, make sure that the shredder is one that can delete the message properly. But when it comes to disposing people's personal data, they don't think about it. Case in point, even in Nigeria, where like you go and buy street food and then the street food is wrapped in people's exam scripts, people's certificates, people's
Yeah.
like
Exam
uh,
sheets that
cover
probably
letter
have
and
like
CV.
they where they go to school, like personal data. I think some schools actually print like they do like this pre-printed thing or pre detailed exam sheet where the person's name is already there, and sometimes you can even include the person's date of birth for an exam. I don't get that point, right? But okay,
Exactly.
moving on. And then you just dispose of those things nonchalantly. That's really trashy behavior. Trashy behavior.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
it's
if
the
not,
classic
or if not
Nigerian until you
Nigerian, ghetto behavior.
ghetto behavior. or
Yet
like
to
even the
behavior.
Nigerian, the typical or even the typical Nigerian like joke that you go and buy street food and then you already is wrapped in someone's certificates. You know, these are the funny things that we see. Yeah, but basically the thing is, I guess this is just a warning for customers. You need to be careful who you trust your data with, right? In some situations you have choices and options, or so you need to consider who you're giving what information to, how you are giving access to what information, and how that affects not only your personal data but the personal data of other people whose data you're going to be releasing, because you're releasing your personal data. So I mean, it's really a catch 22. For me, there was another situation that I thought, wow, okay, you know, I realized that a lot of these privacy fields probably have some in some way to do with security and security measures. So there is an airline, a very massive big airline, that basically, so the way airlines operate in a manner that in a way that so they have a lot of service providers. It's like any big business. You have so many service providers. You have platforms where you integrate your service providers into, so that you can effectively you can your delivery of service can be seamless, so people don't have to go from one website to another before they settle on getting the service they need, right? You just provide one integrated platform. And the thing that happens is that with in a security system, any human point of human contact is a point of risk, so is a point of exposure. So any point in the system where you have people, where you have a connection or human contact, there's a break in the seamlessness of the system. So in those integrated platforms actually have all the vendors access points are deemed a security risk. And then in those vendor access points, you have to then think about the human interface part of it. So the part where maybe employees of that vendor can then access their own part of the platform, and then to access the integrated platform. So what happened in this situation is that an airline has so many customers. um they have so many customers, and they have so many service providers. So one of the service providers, one of their employees accounts was hacked, and as a consequence of that hack, so cyber criminals were able to get into parts of the airline's platform through the integrated platform that they weren't supposed to be able to breach. Upon accessing that, they were able to access proprietary information that allowed them to gain access to a lot of information. So security logins, administrator level security login. And an administrator level security login is like, that's the system operators or the system managers login that enables them to do things at the back end of the system, such as notice where there's a breach, like access breaches, exchange things, assign logins, assign needs based access controls, or assign access controls generally. And so things like that, right? So what they were able to do was, because they then gained access to this part of the platform, they were able to change things with the system. One of the things they did was they actually diverted the payments. So when you're paying on a website, on a shopping website, right, Dolapo, when you're shopping and then you get to a point where you need to pay. So they were able to divert the place where you need to enter the payment information of the customers. And so by so doing, they were able to access everything. So your CVV, your card, long card number, your card name, your billing
You know,
address, all that information they accessed.
quick question here. So I can understand that some parts of the system got hacked, right? But for like them getting access and logging in, didn't the company or didn't the airline have like 2FA or like a verification process for logging in?
Oh, I've not even got to the worst part of the story. So all of this
Ah,
happened, right?
okay. Well, listen,
Well, yeah, like
yeah.
all of this is happening, right? And they don't even know that there is a breach until they're told by
Oh my God.
a third party that their system have been that the cyber criminals have said they've hacked their systems. So they had no system to even know when their systems are being breached. Things like, so normally when your Google gives you the opportunity, when you want to sign into your Gmail, to assign a two-factor authentication system, where you can then have maybe your phone number, you get a pin on your phone number, you get a pin sent to your email, you have a token. Banks do these things. We all have them on our different
Exactly.
um platforms, right? So if they even had that, right, the initial hack wouldn't have been possible because they wouldn't have been able to gain access to the vendor employee accounts that they then use to access and hack the main account. So even they didn't have 2FA, their breach notification systems were as identified by the Information Commissioner's Office, because this was a sanction given by them, which is the UK's data protection authority, that they had such a weak security system. And as we said, data protection laws require that you have a security system that can protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of
Yeah.
the data that you provide. So when you have criminals accessing payment information of customers, being able to divert where they enter payment information, you have created a situation where the confidentiality of their information is compromised, which means that potentially all those people, if they don't quickly change some of the information that has to do with their bank account, or if they don't have a two-factor system with their bank, criminals can just hack into their accounts and take money and take things out and use their cards or their card information to process payments that they didn't authorize and things like that. So the risk was massive, especially for an airline. Like, you'd expect that, at least they would predict these risks and put in measures to ensure that, these things don't happen. But hey ho, here we are. Nobody's above mistakes, quote unquote.
This wasn't a mistake. This was negligence. There's a difference.
I mean, that's why
For
they
me,
find them so heftily.
you know, when you think about it, right, a large part of data protection, right, is also having like a breach response system, right?
Yes.
So you recognize, or the ecosystem recognizes that these things happen, right? It's a possibility. But the real question is, what do you do when a breach now occurs? Like, you should have like a very efficient, system where at least you can back up, you can recover the data, or find a way to get the data back. Something that actually says, oh, I know this has happened and I'm taking the necessary steps to mitigate the downsides of it, right? But these people literally didn't even know that there was something going on below their nose. So it wasn't mistake, it
Yes.
was negligence.
Yeah, no, it was quite a crazy situation, like, I mean, they say all systems are compromisable until they're uncompromisable until they're compromised. So every system can be hacked, basically. It's just that they've not hacked it yet. So the key thing usually, even with these situations, is being able to identify and detect, so taking the basic measures that you need to take, then being able to identify and detect when a breach has occurred. So this is why my concern for companies, people who use these payday loan companies, you don't even know what system they have for their data management security, data security management system. For companies themselves, especially in situations like this where they were clearly negligent, to make sure they put in the right systems and protocols to avoid such situations going undetected.
Right. I think another very, so this new feature on social media where you can literally leave disappearing messages for people, or like leave people one-time messages, right? So, for example, for Snapchat is the fact that you can send someone a time message, right? And after a while, the message completely gets deleted, right? I think for WhatsApp is the fact that you can send people like a view once image, right? A view once. So
Yeah,
once
yeah.
the person clicks on the data, right, or the whatever you send to them, they can only click it once, right? But then I consider this, or they make it seem like it's a privacy enabling feature. But two things stand out for me, right? The one that even really stands out for me is the fact that it's a privacy enabling feature, right? But it doesn't sell what it's supposed to sell. So, for example, you send a view once picture to me, or a view only once picture to me. And the main goal is you want me to see it only once and never be able to see it again or have access to it. But I can literally take a screenshot, right? So you send me something I should only have access to once, and I can take a screenshot, right? So you can actually take a screenshot of those things. Same thing for Snapchat, right? You send someone a picture that's timed, right? But they can take screenshots of it, and they have that data forever. But the really funny one is even the so for Snapchat, right? Snapchat was really selling the story of disappearing chats or disappearing messages. But a really funny thing happened when they were forced to admit that they actually kept the messages or the data that was supposed to be disappearing for an unspecified amount of time, right? So they were actually forced to admit it before a court. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh wow! Not only that you didn't really do your research on really ensuring that this setting is really privacy. It's really a privacy enabling feature, right? You were actually deceiving people, like you were giving people cold zobo. That's literally what they did, right? So it's
Yeah.
just it was just a really I don't know. For me, I didn't find it funny. I was upset about finding out the story because it's a lot. People think that they're able to, when people are being deceived about how much control they have over their data, right? So it didn't really sit well for me.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, I like 100%. I think so. The idea behind this is that GDPR, as well as other data protection laws, and even it's a principle of GDPR of data protection that when you're storing data, you should not store it for longer than is necessary, right? So I guess one of the is not only when they give you things like disappearing pictures and disappearing things, it's not actually just for you as well. It's also for them, in the sense that they're able to also meet their obligations, their retention obligations. So when people like Snapchat are now still retaining, I'm like, what's the point? Is a disservice to you and I? You're doing a
Do you
disservice to
get?
you and
It
I.
was
So
just
why I
really.
don't understand. I don't
So
understand why
I
you keep
think
it.
one
It's
thought for me
crazy.
is if they're really being serious about like the privacy enabled feature, right? Things like being able to screenshot should be disabled once you are probably on that feature. So for example, um, so I was on a call one day, right? And when you're on a call and someone is really talking, but you're not listening to them, right? So I was on a call, but I was also
Dolapo.
watching Netflix, right? It was a video.
Mm,
Let me finish now. So it was a video call, right? So and I took a screenshot of like the video call, like because I took a screenshot of the video call, and I realized that so before formerly you couldn't even take a screenshot. It will tell you that something is playing on your system and you can't take a screenshot, right?
yeah.
But more recently, it will take a screen. You can take a screenshot, but it's totally blank, right? So those kind of things. So Netflix isn't really doing this for privacy, right? They're doing it to protect their own business, right? But for this one, when it comes to people's personality, like you said, people don't pay enough attention. So I think for if you're really selling the idea of a privacy enabled feature, right, for protection of personal data, this sort of thing should be what people should put in consideration.
On 100%. I think even like it's so crazy that like even this thing you're talking about, I even noticed it with Showmax as well recently. Even Showmax is a copyright and a protecting feature as well. So if they are willing to do it for copyright protection, where they know they will be sued by people who companies who own the intellectual property in these copyrights, they should be willing to do the same thing for us data subjects. But this is one of the bigger dilemmas in the data protection space, right? This whole issue of, can data subjects really on their own um drive the enforcement of privacy laws? And that's why we have data protection authorities, right, to kind of give us a little bit of backbone. Because it's just crazy, because we can't how many people, so if even in terms of, especially in Europe where class actions are not commonplace, so in class actions are really, encouraged, like the US, where you have class action of 300 people suing one company. Yeah, it's not really like common in Europe. So for data subjects, I'm now wondering, like, so how do we hold them to account? So you need data protection authorities that are very effective to really, really like drive home the point that you need to hold them accountable and stuff.
Exactly.
Anyway, for me, I think we can even round off on this one, because I think this one is, when something is big enough to conclude. Yeah, this is one
It's
of
big
those.
enough.
It's big
It's
enough.
grand enough.
It's grand enough. So because the fine was a whooping 628 million euro pounds. That's the highest data protection fine given in ever in Europe. It's the
I
largest
can
one.
imagine.
It's a massive, and it's just data protection. And what did they do? So apparently, this company, which is one of the biggest companies, should I say that the owner of the company is one of the billionaires of the world, the richest people in the world. Um, and this company was fined 628 million euro pounds on the complaint of one of a consumer rights organization that complained that basically the company was doing targeted advertising, where a company takes information about what you like, your preferences, what you order a lot, what you eat a lot. Like when Dolapo sees all those food adverts on her social media because she likes
Yeah,
exploring food.
exactly. You get it.
That's targeted advertising. So basically, what this company did was basically the consumer rights organization were arguing that they had no legal basis to give anybody targeted advertising or collect information to process information for the purpose of creating targeted advertising. So that means like collecting all those information about what you like and all that, and then using them to create profiles about you or profiles about people and then giving you adverts based on those profiles that you fall into. And so this company apparently cannot rely on legitimate interest to do that. Legitimate interest is the legal basis that basically means that, hey, I can do this because it's for my benefit to do it, or it's because it's for my benefit to do it. But you cannot use a legitimate interest basis where there is a human right that overrides it, and the human right obviously in the situation, or the right that overrides in the situation, is the right not to just like, it's the right to not be given advertising that I don't want to see, harassing me with food advertisements like they do Dolapo at the time. So that's basically what
I honestly think that we need to do like a whole episode on targeted
I actually
advertising
think
because
so.
not enough people even talk about it.
Yeah,
Regulators are not even paying attention. They're not even at that stage where they're thinking of it, talk less of paying attention to it. So I think it's something like we need to do a
I mean, it
whole
depends on
episode.
what
But I see it a
jurisdiction.
lot. I know it looks good, but you don't have to. I'm not going to talk about what I see. I'm not going to talk about what I used my
This
see
is
my
the,
eyes
are
to
they
see.
stalking
And that's
me?
even for me who knows how
Exactly.
to. Yeah, and that's for
Exactly.
me who even
Exactly.
know how to turn on like a lot of privacy enabling features, right? But some way, somehow, those things still find a way to creep in, right? So there's a lot that still needs to be done in terms of ensuring that these people are
Held
how do I put it
accountable.
now, are doing the right thing in terms of, yeah, held accountable basically and being transparent. There's a lot
Exactly.
that still needs to be done in terms of
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's why hopefully this 628 million pounds fine is a lecture in transparency, giving the Nigerian motherway
I think
negative reinforcements
I know, right? Actually, and I think they deserved it. And I'm speaking for someone who has been a victim.
of
They
targeted
deserve it,
advertising.
but I think
I
I should have
okay.
the money or something.
So for me, I think that I actually, so they haven't released the official, so the data protection authority that issued this fine has not giving us the full gist of why they gave this fine and all that. But I guess we'll find out more when we see the full gist about the fine and when it was given. So I'll then be able to, because I don't know, I find it hard to believe that such a big company would not take into account the legal basis on which they want to give targeted advertising. I don't know, the whole story just doesn't sound right to me. But I guess we'll find out, like I said. Yeah, and I think for me,
Sure.
this story is probably for me the, I'd say this is the most expensive one. Definitely an expensive fail, like the most expensive fail
Definitely.
ever, in fact, as far as
Okay.
regulatory authorities in
You know
Europe are
when not doing the right thing actually costs you money.
we
Exactly.
exactly, the one on that sabi is expensive. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know
So
the
what,
funny
what,
thing,
what story was like the most ridiculous? I think what story was like the most ridiculous for you?
this company that we've just spoken about,
Eh,
with the highest fine ever, they're the highest fine Europe in, like, European Data Protection Authority has given out. But before them, I think the airline that I was talking about gave was the highest fine issued by the UK ICO, or Information Commissioner's Officer, which is the UK's Data Protection Authority, until I think they then reduced the fine at some point, which was some scandal. But I think they had the most ridiculous anyway, because they're such a big company, you'd expect a lot more. But for me, I think the funniest one, I don't know, I'm competing between the Harry 2 story, the school with the Harry 2, Harry 1 story, or the guy who wanted to be forgotten but now will never be forgotten. I'm not sure which one is funnier.
I think it's the guy who wanted to be forgotten, but now will never be forgotten.
But yeah.
It just craves. What did this guy to do to deserve this? Like, come on, like, come on.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think,
And he
yeah.
didn't actually do anything wrong. It just happened that way.
Yeah, but to be honest, he became a legend in the course of it. I think for me, the most embarrassing, I don't know. I'm tempted to say the people that threw away people's documents in the backyard without thinking about how do we throw it away.
I think it's been like a really interesting discourse, right? We look forward to bringing you even juicier feels that will shock us, like Yetunde has said, right? But yeah, it's been really amazing, and our next episode is even going to be more interesting. And please feel free to like drop comments of things that you want us to discuss, like interesting privacy related topics, right? Or emerging tech, right? It would be really interesting to hear your views. But anyways, until next time.
Yeah, it remains our lovely DPO and I, Itunde. This episode was sponsored by Ikigai Innovation Initiative. and was brought to you by Tech Hive Advisory.
And a big shout out to our executive producer, Ridwan Oluyede, associate producers, Dolapo and Yetunde.
This podcast was edited by Ayonfe Aino, shout out to her, and our podcast associate, Victoria Adaramola, and graphics by Okwe Abujade.